What really interests me, first of all, I'm sure it's different for everyone, but generally, when you're a writer of a fiction as you are, what is your relationship to movies? I mean, is it kind of a double-edged sword in a way?
Used to be. I think I've changed the way I viewed this over the past few years. I think that most novelists tend to go in one of two broad streams regarding the world of film. The first one is to say, yeah, I'll sell or I'll option my stuff and I'll take the money and run, and have nothing to do with it. And then the second stream is to be more involved with it. I used to be one of the first, and then I had a movie made that didn't turn out, as well as we'd hoped, and that really changed the way I approached the world of film. So now I do pay more attention to it. I want to be more involved. I want to have a meaningful seat at the table. As a novelist that you're never going to have anything like complete control, and I'm not sure I'd want that even. Because at the end of the day, it's famously, a director's medium. But I have gotten, definitely more involved with the films.
Well, what went wrong with this? Was the Life and Death of Bobby Z? Was that the previous film? Or?
Yeah, exactly. The Death and Life of Bobby Z, which came out as a film titled Bobby Z. Yeah. Look, I mean, nobody ever sets out to make an unsuccessful film, with the best intentions in the world. But it happened, and I think it happened because of some, issues that I'd already identified, but people would say to me, well, you're a novelist, you're not a filmmaker, you don't understand. There's some truth to that argument, and I kind of bought the logic of that argument, but I don't think the logic of that argument is total, and I think that there are some elements of storytelling that remain the same across both media. And so, having had that experience, I hooked up with my buddy Shane Salerno, who's an A-list screenwriter, and he has this company called The Story Factory that has some pretty, good ideas about the nexus between the film and the book worlds, and how to bring the novels to film in a more sort of creative, careful way.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you about that, those two different disciplines, for writing for the novel and writing for film. But first of all, to set up Savages, Oliver Stone optioned this book, and he requested that you come on board as co-screenwriter?
He did, yep, that Shane and I come on board, and that's what we did, And so, I mean, that's major involvement, right, from the get-go. Yeah.
Did he feel like, when you envisioned the kind of the ideal directors for this particular material, I mean, did he feel like he fit just right in your mind from the get-go?
Yeah, this was Shane's idea, and thought that this was sort of right in Oliver's wheelhouse, and the kind of film that Oliver, hadn't made in a couple of years, and that he would respond to the material.
Well, in terms of the process of adapting a screenplay from your own book, it seems like it would be a very torturous one, because you can't necessarily be too precious about your own work, because it won't necessarily fit into a narrative film structure. Was that a difficult process for you?
No, I'm not. Can you hold on? I think it's...
Sure.
Sorry.
No problem.
Repairman just arrived. It's an interesting kind of compromise, because you're quite right. You have to detach yourself a little bit from being the novelist, because I think either consciously or perhaps subconsciously you do become attached to certain, story elements or character elements that may or may not work for film. And I think that you have to be, somewhat open and flexible to that possibility. At the same time, you want to protect the essence of the book. Right. And the essence of the characters and the main story and the sort of main identity of who those characters are. So it's a tricky path to walk. Yeah.
Well, tell me about this world that you created in Savages, and that you continue on with the Kings of Cool, your prequel book that just came out.
Thanks.
Where did this knowledge of these lifestyles come from for you?
Well, both books are about two young marijuana growers and their mutual girlfriend, in Laguna Beach, California. And in Savages, you meet them rather late in their arc. And they grow the best marijuana going, and the Mexican cartel wants to take them over, and bad things happen. To answer the question, I guess, that you asked me, I lived in that area. I still frequent that area a lot, hang out on the beach, get to know people, hear stories, hear snatches of dialogue and conversation. So a lot of it was a matter of looking and listening and talking to people, over the course of years, really. And so when I sat down to write, both these books, I already had a very, very strong idea about who these people were, how they spoke, how they behaved, what they did. I hasten to add, I'm not a marijuana grower or even a user for that matter. So it doesn't come from personal experience in that regard.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagination plays a big role in
it plays some role, but I think that research, plays a lot of the role.
Yeah. So tell me about their manner of speaking, as it's expressed in the actual prose in the book as well as the dialogue. It has such a musicality to it. I mean, did that just flow out of you from the get-go when you started writing?
I certainly wanted it to have an element of musicality to it. I think some of it flowed, and some of it was a matter of what we always do is rewriting and going back in and listening to rhythms. I know that I drove copy editors insane, because I would have these odd, for instance, indents where a new sentence would start, not 6 spaces in but 13, and I wanted it at 13 and not at 12. Mm-hmm. Because I definitely heard a certain kind of music to it, and wanted the beats to fall where I wanted them to fall. So a lot of that was the crafting that writers always do, going back and rewriting. Other parts of what I think you're referring to, was just I really heard this book in my head, and I heard these books as sort of a new kind of voice that I'm hearing out here on the West Coast. As it evolves.
And it's such a strong voice and a strong style to these two books. And I'm thinking about the great actors that immerse themselves in a particular role and particular world, and they have a hard time shaking it. I know you're working on multiple books at one time. Was this a hard kind of voice to shake for you?
No, not really. What an interesting question, though. No, I don't think so. I think, pretty disciplined about my writing, and the hours that I write, and then pretty disciplined about leaving it behind.
Yeah.
And going out and doing other things. Now, a lot of times I'll do literally a physical break. If I was writing Savages, I'd set it down, then I'd go out and walk or run, for a few miles, or go down to the ocean and swim, or catch a few waves or whatever. And that that really helps you make a transition into something else.
Tell me about the how involved you were in the actual production. I mean, were you present on set at all?
Yeah, I was present on set sometimes, certainly not all the time. I was present at location scouts and that kind of thing, and and talking about various issues of the film. But a lot of it for me was showing people around these areas and showing them where various events in the book actually took place, and and trying to give them a sense of that world.
Yeah. And the actors, the sensational cast of this film,
crazy,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a lot of them, as well as being attracted to working with Stone, I mean, they're attracted to the prospect of sinking their teeth into these great, vivid characters. I mean, when you see the film now, what about it surprises you from what you had in your head?
It's always strange to see something that existed as this little idea when you're sitting at a desk several years ago, and then you suddenly, either on the set see real people acting it out, or on the screen, you see it big and tall and kinetic and bright and all of that kind of thing that never fails to be simultaneously a little jarring and of course exciting, So I don't know if there are any particular surprises, because I was involved in the process, but it's always kind of startling. And it's funny because you forget what you did and didn't do. I was watching the trailer with Shane one day, and there was a line in it. What was it? Oh, if you let people think you're weak, sooner or later you're going to have to kill them. And I said, Shane, that's a really good line. And he started to laugh. He said, it's in the book. And, I'd forgotten that was my line as opposed to, ours or his or ours or whatever. So it's kind of funny how it can blend in your head,
When you sat down to kind of devise your second book, the Kings of Cool, I guess it's the kind of the prequel to Savages.
Yeah, it is.
What was the main attraction? Because a large part of the book kind of traces a multi-generational aspect. Was that the main draw for you?
That was the main draw. I wanted to write a book about families, oddly enough. And the choices that one has to make. I mean, the sort of central, story of the Kings of Cool is about these guys having to make choices between their blood family, their biological families, and the family that they've created amongst these very close friends. And I think those are difficult and tough choices, and that's at the heart of that book. At the same time, I wanted to do kind of a larger book than Savages and tell a longer story that was an origin story, and not necessarily just an origin story of those three characters, but in a way sort of an origin story about two other things, the evolution of the drug trade out here in Southern California, and also, a little bit about the journey that the country has taken, over the years, from the counterculture beginnings to today. And so that was really attractive to me and really drove the story.
What was the main difference for you in kind of tracing the California from decades ago to where it is today? What kind of a different world is it?
Yeah, it's virtually unrecognizable, I think. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, some things remain the same. Look, the ocean's always going to be the ocean, and that's the constant here. But, I mean, society has changed so much. The economics have changed. People's aspirations have changed. But what I was really tracking in that book, I think, was the evolution from idealism, to cynicism, almost naive idealism of the hippie era, to the cynicism, I think, that exists today, among the same people. And so I think, that really has been the change where you've gone from communes to real estate.
We talk about that a lot on the show, and I mean it's something that we see in our world, and particularly our country, but it's also reflected in our movies today. Because if you think of the films of decades ago, they were concerned with the world around them. They were commenting on them, even in a subversive way. But today there seems to be a apathy. I find.
I think it's an apathy born of fatigue. I think we've been sort of worn down, by a number of crises, and certainly 9/11 I think had a lot to do with that, and then the 2008 economic plunge and the things that we've done to ourselves. I think that there's a fatigue about the world. It's funny you mentioned that. I had this conversation with someone the other day saying you could track the mood of the country by the illicit drug that's in vogue. You do marijuana, then you do LSD, and you've got the hippie psychedelic, free love kind of thing, and then you go into cocaine, which is about money and power and drive, and then we go to crystal meth. Now I mean the biggest drug problem is the legal opium derivatives like OxyContin, and I think maybe people want to go to sleep. It certainly shows in pop culture, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, look at what we're watching on TV.
And it's troubling to me. There's this lack of engagement that I miss. And I wasn't necessarily I was alive 7 years in the 70s, so it wasn't necessarily something that.
I get you.
Yeah, but
and I mean, the other night I had that HBO show on Newsroom,
Yeah.
And it was about being engaged, you know, and the show's struggling, I think. I mean, it just got picked up, but you know, you looked at those characters, and that's kind of what they were saying. You know, were we ever going to re-engage?
Mm-hmm. So, talking about the things that engage you, I know that you're working on several additional projects. There's another film on the horizon too, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Just finishing up some notes now on a screenplay of Satori, a book I did that, you know, was again a prequel actually of a book by, you know, Trevanian, and Shane and I are doing the script for that, and that's Leonardo DiCaprio's attached, and then Chuck Hogan and I, you know, of the town, are talking about doing an original film story together, and that's exciting, and you know, and then I'm being me, you know, the whole maybe ADD thing, you know, I'm doing 3 books at the moment.
Wow, I can't imagine You have to be a great at compartmentalizing.
I am actually. Yeah, it's a little sad. Yeah.
but I want to ask you a question about crime fiction. Because obviously there's an astounding and a long and proud tradition when it comes to crime fiction. So do you kind of hear those voices of the Elroys and that kind of thing in your head when you're writing?
You know, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if I hear them in my head as I'm writing, but, you know, for instance, I mean, I keep a quote from Raymond Chandler on my computer, you know, I mean, taped to the side of the box. You know, down these mean streets must come a man who is not himself mean, which I think sort of sets the standard, you know, for the noir hero, you know, even the noir anti-hero. But yes, and I'm very, very aware of coming, you know, out of that stream of writer, and those guys mean a lot to me.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, my co-host, he's in love with your work. He's read everything. And he wanted me to ask you if there are any plans to adapt the Dawn Patrol into a film.
You know, at the moment, no. There's some talk perhaps about television. Yeah.
Well, that's an exciting medium for writers. I mean, that in many ways that's more exciting than film nowadays.
Well, listen, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, the differences are obvious, and they each have their potentials, you know. I mean, I think, you know, with television, you get 26 hours to explore a character.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to, you know, a little under 2. So, you know, I mean, you look at shows like The Sopranos and The Wire and Friday Night Lights and Rescue Me, and some of those shows that, you know, I think were so beautifully written and performed, and yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, your books are beautiful, and it's a great film, man. And I can't thank you enough. I've been looking forward to talking to you, and I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, and thank you very much. And